I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Vegas 113, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event, and biggest stock riser on this card has got to be Mario Batista. Main event, gets the finish in the second round. A rare finish for Mario Batista. You know, that's one of the reasons why maybe he's not a huge fan favorite. It's because a lot of his fights do end up going the distance. So good to see him get the submission victory there in the second round via rear naked choke. I'm actually surprised to see the line this close coming up to fight time. I think Batista was a bigger favorite sort of going in, so makes the victory even better. Obviously, we found out after the fight that Oliveira had been dealing with an arm injury. Probably something he should have considered in terms of pulling out of this fight, but the fight ends up taking place. Batista goes there, gets a big win. And you got to remember too, like for Batista, this was kind of a risky fight in the sense that Oliveira, not ranked very high, not a lot of great wins. He was, a little bit younger. The upside there was for Oliveira, even Batista getting this win, I think it's certainly going to help his career. It's not one of those wins you're going to look back on in his career and go like, that was like an amazing win. You know what I mean? Like in terms of his overall resume, he's had some bigger name wins is what I'm getting at here. And this will certainly help. But I think Batista had a lot to lose tonight, especially coming off that loss to Umar Nurmagomedov. So Batista's back in the mix, calls out Corey Sandhagen. I'd love to see that rematch. Remember, they had their first fight on like a short notice fight for Batista coming into the UFC. So curious to see how that rematch would go. Sandhagen obviously needs someone to fight at this point. So yeah, I'd be down with that. But big win there for Mario Batista, one of the nicest guys in the sport. Love to see people, good people get big wins like this. So shout out to Mario Batista, big win there in the main event. Okay, second biggest stock riser on this card is got to be the man in the co-main event, and that's Kyoji Horiguchi. Now, I was expecting maybe a little bit more dominance in this fight, but I still think, he looked good. And the big thing here is, he's got a couple wins now since coming back to the UFC. And Merrill Albazi, a guy that's been at the top, not title fights, but has big fights previously. And for Horiguchi to go out there and get the win, very impressive. Would have liked to finish here, but hey, you know what? At flyweight right now, there's a lot of interesting things going on. Obviously, you have a couple contenders at the top with Tyra and Manel Kopp. Joshua Van, when is he going to defend that title? We'll have to see. Horiguchi's right behind them, in my opinion. And you never know how timing could work out. There's an injury to Tyra or Kopp or someone, who knows? Horiguchi, in my opinion, has certainly earned his right to be near the top here. So I thought this was a good win. Would have been nice to see to get the finish, but either way, his stock goes up just because at flyweight, there aren't a ton of contenders outside of those couple names that I just mentioned there. So for him to get this win, certainly going to put him in a great position. So Kyoji Horiguchi, no questions asked, another big stock riser on this card. Okay, third biggest stock riser on this card. I'm going to go with Jakub Wiklacz, getting the third round submission there. And part of it is that, he comes in the UFC, beats Patchy Mix in a fight where he was, I believe, an underdog in that one. And, 29 years old, right at that good age range, was an underdog going into tonight at plus 115. He gets a submission win. I think there's something here with him. I think he's a guy that, very well rounded, fought some good opposition even prior to coming into the UFC, right? That's something to kind of take note of. And you look at their 11 submissions, like some pretty good ground game overall, right? That we're seeing throughout his career. We are seeing a lot of finishes from him overall. Again, more of his wins coming by submission than any other way. I think he's been a nice addition. The UFC does do a lot of international cards. He's a guy they could certainly use, having another Polish fighter. So I like the performance. It wasn't flawless. Obviously, Gafarov had some success early in that fight, but Wiklacz sticking with it, getting the submission win. That also, as well got him a performance of the night bonus as well too. So that's nice too. But I think someone to keep an eye on in the bantamweight division. I'm not going to say a dark horse, but someone certainly that we should be keeping an eye on going forward in that weight class. Okay, let's do a couple honorable mentions here. I got to go with Rizvan Kuniev for the simple fact that he was an underdog in this fight. He ends up coming through and getting it done. Shout out to a lot of people. I know Adam Martin, Nick Kalikas. There was a lot of people on Kuniev. I kind of wish I would have thought about that a little bit more and picked him. I didn't end up picking him in this fight. But look, good win for the division. Again, we know heavyweight is so wide open outside of some of those top names, kind of like flyweight a little bit. So this win in terms of his stock really helps. Now, I know there's going to be people in the comment section angrily typing right now and going, well, the fight wasn't very entertaining. You're exactly right. That's why he's getting an honorable mention, not a full out stock rise here. But his stock does go up in the simple fact that at heavyweight, you need every win you can get. You can just see fighters really shoot up the rankings because it is so wide open right now. So Kuniev's got to get an honorable mention for the simple fact of his placement in the heavyweight division. And then another honorable mention, I'll go Farid Basharat. Good win over a good opponent here in John Matsumoto. Yeah, not much to say here. Again, not totally flawless. I don't think he looked necessarily like a minus 300 favorite, but he's another guy that I would like to see tested a little bit more in the weight class. Maybe give him a ranked opponent next because he's undefeated. There is some, So something to keep note of with that, and the fact that he's under 30. I think there's some interesting things here with Farid Basharat. So someone to definitely keep an eye on in this weight class as well too. And then just one more honorable mention I'll throw out there. Dustin Jacoby, got to give him credit. I know he was favored coming in to beat Julius Walker, not by much though, which actually surprises me a bit. It's a simple fact that, he went from Jimmy Crute to fighting him in Australia to now fighting Julius Walker. Again, another situation where, I think Walker had all the upside here. A win over Julius Walker doesn't do much for Dustin Jacoby's career, but Jacoby continuing to entertain, get big wins like this. He's now won 3 in a row, so you got to like that. And at his age, at 37, still doing damage. So Dustin Jacoby, another honorable mention here on the stock report. Okay, let's get to our stock droppers. Biggest stock dropper on this card. There's a couple different ways you could go, but to me, it's got to be, it's not though, guys. Without further ado, the biggest stock dropper on this card is Jailton Almeida. And I mean, the thumbnail gave it away anyways, but you just look at the fact that he's not entertaining. He's 34, and I know for heavyweight, that's not that old, but he's now lost back-to-back fights, and I think this is a winnable fight for him, and he ends up getting Almeida himself in this fight, right? So you just look, I remember there was a point where people were talking about him being, it's interesting matchup for Aspinall or some of the guys at the top, but now with 2 losses in a row, that's a pretty big setback here. So he's, we'll see what the UFC decides to do, because it's pretty obvious they don't like his fighting style. And they're, again, giving guys to kind of build a name off of. So I don't really know where he goes from here. I think he'll get another fight, although would it shock you guys if they cut Almeida after this last loss? It wouldn't for me. I mean, there's such a short rope now with certain fighters. So, I mean, that's something to keep an eye on going forward. But yeah, this was just a missed opportunity for Almeida to get back kind of in that contender spot. So, to me, Almeida had the most to lose here. He does end up losing, especially as a favorite, and he is my biggest stock dropper. Okay, second biggest stock dropper is Vinicius Oliveira. Now, again, I cut him a little bit of slack because of the arm injury, but still, maybe he should have pulled out of that one. I don't know. I know the UFC doesn't like that stuff, but if you're compromised against a guy like Mario Batista, that's not a good idea. I know he had the nice win streak coming into this one. He's not totally, in hot water, so to speak, because he's 30. He's like kind of in the prime of his career. He could get a couple wins and turn things around, but that whole win streak now is out the window, especially the fact he got finished here. I thought he looked good in that first round. Second round, though, I think that was all Batista, and then he ends up, losing via submission. So I think for Oliveira, back to the drawing board, but I'm not giving up on him yet. I'd like to see what he looks like healthy, full camp, all that stuff. I guess he had a full camp for this one, but I think, though, it's still a big hit for him in his aspirations at bantamweight. Okay, third biggest stock dropper on this card. This one was kind of tough because pretty much all the favorites won, for the most part. Again, people, when it comes to the stock report, people are like, what about this guy? Like last week, I didn't have Tai Tuivasa on a stock dropper. It's like, what stock did Tai Tuivasa have going into the last fight? Same thing applies here to Alex Morono, Nico Price. They're not going to be a stock dropper for me because I don't think either had much stock going in. Alex Morono was the biggest underdog on this card. Nico Price was like a last minute addition, and he hasn't fought in forever. I wasn't expecting either of these guys to win here, right? So that's kind of how I look at this. So my third biggest stock dropper here has got to be John Matsumoto, and it's for the simple fact that he built up a nice win streak here. He's 26 years old. Again, the age is good here. He's a guy that could certainly turn things around. And yes, he got the win over Miles Johns, but that's 3 split decisions in his last 3 fights. The Rob Font fight, I think, could have gone another way there, possibly on the judges' scorecards. But Farid Basharat, this could have been, just think if he would have won, how different things would be for him in the bantamweight division. Right now, he's looking like that guy who just can't get over the hump, can't get into the rankings, is just sort of one of these fringe bantamweights that's on the outside looking in. So to me, that's a bit of a tough loss for him there, too, with Matsumoto not being able to capitalize on this. And then one last honorable mention on here. And again, I don't blame him because his opponent was switched up, but Julius Walker, remember that debut against Alonzo Menefield, had a pretty good showing there, does get the win over Cicada before that, or in the fight previously, but then gets finished by Dustin Jacoby. That's a bit tough. Had this fight gone the distance, feel a little bit better. Again, with him too, very young, 26 years old, so still an opportunity here to make some noise, and he's entertaining. He's a guy that I think the UFC will keep around a little bit longer, right? He's putting on good performances, but this was just a tough loss for him in terms of the potential of the weight class. Like, again, another situation like John Matsumoto, had he won, think of how big of a win that would have been for Julius Walker. He ends up coming up short. Don't blame him though, short notice, all that stuff. But so those are my picks for those have been my picks for UFC Vegas 113. Just to quickly go over it again, Mario Batista, Kyoji Horiguchi, and Wiklacz as my stock risers. Jailton Almeida, Vinicius Oliveira, and John Matsumoto as my stock droppers. Let me know in the comments, guys, who you are going with for your 3 biggest stock risers, 3 biggest stock droppers. Nobody ever does this. They always just talk about how, well, I don't agree with this. Just give me your top 3, bottom 3. We can debate that. Let's do that. That's a lot more fun than just picking one of my picks and critiquing it to death. That would be a lot more fun. Hope you enjoy the Super Bowl today. I'm cheering on my Seattle Seahawks. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. We'll be doing a Q&A tomorrow instead of a preview show because there's no UFC event next week. So take care, and I'll talk to you guys soon.